can see all of you. Hopefully the comments are working. If someone puts in a comment, which I can now see from Steve from Berkeley, so thank you for that. Taking this moment to like, yes, remember to like if you like, of course. Every week it's always it's good for the videos and it's good encouragement for me. Boom, this is Tokyo tonight. This is a New Zealand jersey. I have a Japan jersey. They did very well tonight, but they didn't get through. So we've got the Rugby World Cup, of course, to talk about, among many other things. But yes, it's great to see you all. So hey, we've got Travis Moore, long time no see. Yes indeed. Boom, like that, 2 hands in the air. We've got who have we got here? Right now I've got it configured for top chat instead of live chat. So I see we've got Bald Berlitz boy. Good to see a Bald Berlitz boy. We've got Travis Moore. Evening from Bangkok. One night in Bangkok with Travis Moore. We've got Dave O'Hunter. Good to see you. Indeed, the Boom Special, just like on the bus. Thank you. I saw the tweet. We've got Perk. Good to see you, Perk. Good to see you back. We've got Tai Nakamura. Good to see you, man. We've got Mr. Gordy Chep. Sergeant Bilko. Who else we got in here? Quint Rankin. Good to see you all. Bam, boom, bomb, bum. I don't know. I guess that's what the next one is if you go by the alphabetical letters. We've got the J-Vlog. Salutations, peeps. And yes, indeed, if you're in the comments, it's always nice to see you people say hello. It's nice to know that you're out there. Makes me feel like I'm not talking to myself, which you know I'd be doing anyway, so that's perfectly okay. It's good to see you all anyway. I hope you've been having a good week. I had I've been glued to watching the rugby, so naturally this was a bit of a last minute effort to get the topics for tonight, but they are in. If there is time, I would like to make some tunes tonight. I haven't actually done that for a while, but yes, let's go through and see what topics we've got. Remember, as always, if you @mark me, Hiko Simon, it will make it'll highlight it orange to me, so I will be able to notice it there in the comments, and I will talk about any topic that you want me to talk about. But otherwise, I will just jump straight into it, to quote Mr. Philip DeFranco, who invented most of those things that people say on these sort of videos. So yes, the first thing that we've got is reverse order, so starting from tonight and working backwards tonight, not doing chronologically. Yes indeed, Japan lost, and just at the moment, which I watched on NHK, and just at the moment that Japan lost, a news flash popped up on the screen on NHK, as it often does in these situations, saying NHK news flash, Japan just lost, which I knew because I was watching it at that time on NHK. It's a thing about Japan that happens. Hey Jordan Peterson, good to see you. It's our man in Japan who's not Tico Sam, that is true. Hey Wing Star, good to see you. Good morning from Jersey. Good to see you from New Jersey. I know people from New Jersey, and you know, they assure me it's nothing like Jersey Shore, which I actually found disappointing. But yes, good to have you along anyway. Here it's actually a lovely place over there, and actually must be quite early in the morning, so congrats on getting up, and thank you. So yes indeed, Japan did lose 3-26. I guess it's the result that was probably expected, but Travis Moore, you should feel like you should clean your room now. Really, looking at this, oh, it's a bit messy behind. Let's just push mess out of the way. In fact, now I realize there's all sorts of mess behind me here, but yes, I try to keep this narrow camera frame relatively tidy, but yes, it's more like Joker movie, which I haven't seen yet, although everyone seems to be saying it's good. I can't get into the Marvel movies. I just feel like it's just too much hassle, and I know I watched a couple, and it's like I did like the soundtrack, for example, to Guardians of the Galaxy and so on, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just like watching a fireworks display that goes on for like 4 hours, if you ask me. It's just like, I enjoy fireworks, I enjoy good special effects, I like those sorts of movies. I like the humor in Deadpool, I like, you know, there's things I can find to like in all those movies, but it's all just a little bit too much. So, I don't know, to me it sounds like studio hype, even if it's good. But if it's on the airplane, I'm going to Singapore this week, by the way. If any of you are in Singapore and would like to say hello, I'm not sure if I have the time, but yeah, ping me, DM me on Twitter or something like that. Always happy to meet people in Singapore. But yes, if, for example, the Joker is on the airplane, I'll probably watch it, but otherwise I'm probably just going to download some Netflix and Amazon Prime stuff to watch. Which I've got a topic in here, by the way, that I downloaded, Lodge 49. I actually saw that there's apparently a new series, a second season of Lodge 49 that's not available in Japan yet, but I looked at the first season since I didn't know it, and it was being promoted by the brother of Ken Tanaka. You might recall, Help Me Find Parents. His brother, David Yuri, is actually a reasonably, actually pretty, but from my point of view, a very successful person who just manages to get into every like really cool TV series getting made in Los Angeles. And yeah, he featured in this, and that was just part of the reason I thought I'd get around and watch it. And yeah, it was actually takes a long way to build, but because I binge watched the whole thing. And what I loved about it was sort of an ensemble type thing. I've got a link to it later on in today's show, but yeah, that was pretty cool anyway. But I'm getting distracted because I saw someone talking about Joker, and yes, indeed, it's not like Marvel or DC movies at all, so I may like it. Hey, Olivia D, good to see you. The J-Vlog, I do lots of travel. I don't have any pets. That's right, I don't have any pets. I do have a child, so I do have to keep him fed, but you know, I get some help with that. So yes, that's right, and it would be hard probably to have pets, although it seems, you know, yeah, I don't know what people do who do it, but there you go. So yes, anyway, Japan lost in terms of the game tonight for South Africa, since we're going in reverse order. The games today, by the way, they were France, Wales for the third quarterfinal, but it was the first one today, and Japan versus South Africa. France, Wales, they're both in the Six Nations. France plays beautiful rugby when they're interested in playing beautiful rugby, and today they played pretty beautiful rugby, not their best rugby, but pretty beautiful rugby. And as a New Zealander, where we really aspire to play sort of expansive running rugby in the way that the French play when they're playing well, I thought, yeah, this actually looks really, really nice. So I found myself supporting the French against the Welsh, and they played really, really well until they had a New Caledonian player who actually scored a try in the first half. He actually seems to be a really good player, but he thought it'd be a good idea to elbow a Welsh player in the face really hard, in a really obvious way. And that's not a good thing. So he was red carded, and that pretty much ended the game, and it gave the game back to Wales, which was a shame in terms of a spectacle, but totally deserved. So France both won and then lost the game, rather than Wales really won it. The second game, South Africa versus Japan. This was the game that everybody, hey, Bitcoin billionaire, good to have you there in the comments. The second game, Wales versus South Africa versus Japan. This was the game that Japan won that was considered a miracle a few years ago, so it was kind of a repeat of that. So an opportunity for revenge, if you look at it that way, for South Africa. And, you know, a way for Japan, which has clearly improved a lot since that last World Cup where it beat South Africa, to maybe prove that it's not a fluke and that it really is a contender now. To turn up and show that those two wins against Scotland and Ireland were actually something that it could repeat. So yeah, the game proceeded, and pretty much as I predicted. I put in my comments and my predictions ahead of the game that South Africa would basically just look to. South Africa's style is just to play very physical, very boring, very sort of you know, stable, and just grind them out. And you know, it's logical to assume that South Africa would just look to impose its style upon Japan, and that's exactly what happened. And you know, Japan tried to run. They tried to pass the ball wide early, which they do actually, which is generally not wise for the reasons that the South Africans showed. They just rushed them up on defense and chased it down and just made it impossible for Japan to do anything. They dominated them in the lineouts, the scrums. They dominated them at times. They basically ground them out, and they gave them nowhere to play their game. The game was slowed down. It was boring. Which is exactly the game that South Africa wants, and that they won by. South Africa, that said, they've scored a lot of tries in this tournament, and they played very well during the pool matches. So they're playing probably, along with New Zealand, the best rugby in the tournament right now, especially based on Wales not really playing very well in the other quarterfinal. They're probably going to do very well. You know, they're probably going to get through to the final, I would predict now. On the other side from yesterday, England versus Australia. England played very, very well. Australia just wasn't really up to it, and they haven't really looked up to it. Sometimes they play crap for 4 years, but then they peak right at the World Cup and surprise everybody. And I guess we're looking to see if Shaker actually had a plan for Australia to suddenly start playing good in the World Cup. And honestly, it never really came to fruition. They just played the way they've been playing for the last couple of years. England played very, very well. A bit like South Africa. They played boring rugby, but they were just very, very solid. And that, in the end of the day, is sort of what did it. Yeah, it was pretty solid by England, and it looks like so they convincingly won the first game. The second game, New Zealand, Ireland, which before the World Cup, Ireland was ranked 1 and New Zealand was ranked 2, so that was what people were thinking might be a grand final. However, it ended up being the quarterfinal, and frankly, Ireland, you thought because Ireland was so highly ranked, Japan beating them, that was like an amazing sort of a thing, but New Zealand kind of made them look not very good. They looked one-dimensional. They didn't really have an answer to being confronted. They made a lot of basic mistakes, like unforced mistakes, but probably under the overall pressure of playing New Zealand. And as a New Zealander, what we aspire to see when we watch our team play rugby is we just want to see beautiful rugby. We want to see cool passes, we want to see running, we want to see kick passing, and we want all the basic stuff to be done really, really well. We want to win the scrums, we want the line-outs to be stable. You just want to see a complete game. And it was pretty close to that for the All Blacks, actually. They looked really, they looked like they weren't even at the very, very top of their game. So New Zealand did very, very well, and right now I would say based on form they probably look like the best team in the tournament. They are the top ranked team in the world now, but I'd say probably New Zealand to beat England and South Africa to beat Wales next week and go into a final. I will be flying back to Japan when the New Zealand-England game is on, which is a bit of a pain, so I'm going to have to go into a social media blackout while I'm on the plane. So I can come home. I've got the game already recorded, so I'll come home and watch it. But that will be pretty much it. And Mr. Cordy Chap, New Zealand plays beautiful rugby. No, New Zealand doesn't play by the book. You don't know rugby if you say that, honestly. Fiji plays Harlem Globetrotters, and I agree that they play beautiful rugby. France is capable of playing beautiful rugby. Australia used to play beautiful rugby, but they've kind of lost the skills to be able to do it. But no, New Zealand plays, New Zealand aspires to play beautiful rugby. I mean, it can play ugly rugby if it needs to. But, take the other day against Ireland. They played a lot of beautiful rugby. You look at the connections, you look at the skills and the running. You look at the forwards running as well as the backs. I mean, again, it's the sort of rugby that when Australia's got a good team that they play like as well. Australia also plays running rugby. But, they can't execute right now. They don't have the skills in the team. New Zealand does, and they did. On that, I have to disagree with you, Mr. Cordy Chap. So anyway, the rugby is doing very, very well. Jays and Fiji play sevens, as do all countries, and they play the sevens better than anybody else. They also play pretty well at 15s. I mean, back in the day, they used to beat Australia regularly. They're not so strong at 15s lately. Fiji plays okay. They didn't have a great tournament, mainly because their players like the Samoans and the Tongans mostly play in pro clubs in Europe, and they don't get much time that they're able to actually play together. In fact, it's rare they can even get all their own best players together. And this is why you see so many Fijian players pop up in other teams like New Zealand and Australia and France, for example. But JZM, also true, definitely, that knockout games don't encourage beautiful games, but I would say look at the Ireland-New Zealand game. We were able to play beautiful because, honestly, we were kind of comfortable. In the end, the Irish weren't as tough as we were expecting them to be. But I agree, knockout rugby generally gets to be kind of dour to watch, and I think that's what the South Africa-Japan game was like. And honestly, France had moments where they looked great, but and unfortunately they kind of undid themselves. But they had moments, but I think it was the more boring team that won. You could definitely say the same of England, Australia as well. I think Australia tried to be more inventive, they just didn't quite have the ability to execute. So, personally, of course, I'm biased. I'm a New Zealand fan. Look at the shirt that I'm wearing. But I believe that right now New Zealand is the only team really left in the tournament that aspires to play beautiful rugby, even if we don't always play it. We can play like South Africa. We can play like England if it's what's necessary to beat them. But, it's always nice if we can win and win with style. That's what New Zealand is expecting. That's what I'll be hoping for next week. So that is the rugby. Anyway, this, in the meantime, is the Typhoons. This is not good. There are two typhoons. We don't name them in Japan. That we just give them numbers. So of course, Hagibis was Typhoon 19. I don't know what the sexy names for Typhoon number 20 and Typhoon number 21 are. All that I know is that on about the 25th, it looks like we are going to have two typhoons hit Tokyo at approximately the same time. I mean, who knows? It might be one of those like disaster movies where they'll like mash together and turn into a super typhoon. Although it's getting to the time of the year where the water temperatures around Japan are a bit cooler, and they generally lose a bit of their steam by the time they make it to Japan. But certainly you have two typhoons there heading to Japan, heading towards Tokyo at about the same time. Typhoon Hagis, I'm just going to call it Hagis. I think it was called Hagibis, but who cares? Sergeant Bilko, thank you for the support for New Zealand. That's what I can. Oh, and yes, indeed. Well, we'll get to the Canadian shoveling, because they are very well sweeping. They're good at sweeping, and you know what? The Scots, they could have helped out the sweeping as well. I mean, I think curling is like the only sport they're actually now still competitive at. Yet they, actually chose to get their lawyers involved in the World Cup instead. But we'll come to that anyway. That's for later on. Quick whinge I made today. Canterbury, New Zealand. Okay, I'll be honest. You guys all saw it when they showed the new design Japan rugby jerseys. I kind of made fun of it. I didn't like the lines and the way it made it look like an optical illusion, like there was like someone carrying a baby carrier or something like that. And I didn't understand the design. However, when you see everybody wearing the jerseys and the Japan team wearing the jerseys and playing so well, hey, I admit I got on the bandwagon. I have Japan jerseys anyway, but I wanted to buy one. But when I wanted to buy one, which is back during New Zealand Namibia, like the third game I think of the competition, and the pool matches, they were sold out everywhere. I mean, I didn't actually go to a Canterbury shop, true, but I was looking online. I was looking at the sports shops that had every other jersey. You could get the kids' jersey, so I got one for my son, but I couldn't get a Canterbury jersey. And it's it's kind of been a topic about how it's been impossible to get hold of them. Which to me is, again, Canterbury of New Zealand is a New Zealand company, and I want them to do well. Given that they make most of the jerseys of most of the teams in the World Cup, including the Japan team, it's a great business opportunity, which I feel like they've kind of squandered by miscalculating the popularity of those jerseys. Maybe partly because of people like me, but it is a shame. I mean, I wish they could make them faster to supply the demand for it. And, I think I still want to get one after this. Hey, Naruto, good to see you. Aunt Up Station. Of course, I've followed you on Facebook forever, but I hadn't actually realized that I wasn't following you on Twitter. The thing about Twitter is that lots of people follow me, and I used to follow everyone back, but sometimes when I'd catch up following people back, it meant that I'd be following like 50 people a day or something like that. And when I did that for a few days, Twitter started saying that I'm showing suspicious activity, like I'm following too many people at once, and it started to like freeze my ability to follow people. This is a while ago, so then I sort of became lazy. On Twitter, if I won't look at who's following me anymore, but what I will do is if someone likes a tweet or retweets or engages or comments or does something like that, I'll check, and when I see that they're following me and I don't follow them back, I'll totally follow them if they do that. So yeah, Naruto, it was good to see you, and it's actually just because you interacted with one of my tweets that I noticed, and it's cool to be following you now. So yes, good indeed to see you. And Waito-san, hey, good to see you, Waito-san. Hisashiburi indeed. The Scottish also dominate in deep frying food that should never be fried, says JZM. I've never actually had a deep fried Mars bar, and I gotta admit I'm morbidly curious about that. That sounds like it could be good. It's a bit like a deep fried banana. It doesn't make sense until you have it. But yeah, who knows? I mean, tossing haggis. I'm sure there's lots of things. But yes, in any case, we'll get to the sweeping stuff. I actually featured a book. In fact, I think I've got it behind me somewhere here. I should have been better prepared with it. Where is it? It's around here somewhere. Anyway, I've got this book. Oh, here it is. I featured this book, and I've talked about this a while ago when I read it and reviewed it. Yes, apparently the book got featured in a review article in Tokyo Weekender, and it looks like they found it very interesting as well. And just to repeat, it's a great book. It's available on Amazon as an ebook or a print book. It's by Michael Howard. It's called The Salaryman, and it's talking about 10 years of working as a very specific type of salaryman, as an agio, as a salesperson, which, if you ask me, I've worked as a system consultant for sales departments. So my job involved downloading everything that a salesperson does in their day and putting it into a system. And I learned from that salespeople have like the hardest job. Like if you think of all the types of Japanese salarymen that exist, the agio, the life of the agio is the real hardcore Japanese sort of corporate samurai. And I couldn't do that job. I've done lots of jobs in Japan. I mean, I've gone as deep as I think any person should rightfully go. And I have not done that. But this person did. They were a salesman at a Japanese company. And they went through all the drinking and entertaining and all sorts of stuff, and all the stuff which I kind of tried to minimize my exposure to. They did, and they wrote a great book about it. And apart from the fact that the book is really easy to read, it's also illustrated with he got a great illustrator who put lots of sort of captions of the situations he's talking about. The chapters are really short, which makes them very readable, and yeah, it's well written, it's humorous, it's interesting. If you've never been to Japan before, you want to know what it's like working in Japanese companies, it's pretty good. I mean, the stuff which I recognize as being legit. Plus, I met the guy actually as well before he wrote the book, and he told me about it when he wrote it. And I read it, but it's not crap. It's pretty good actually, and I would recommend it. So and don't take my word for it. The Tokyo Weekender recommends it as well. They do a feature of the article, and yes, indeed. I mean, the guy actually kind of looks like that, which makes me a little bit jealous. I mean, but what can you do? Take what you give it. So anyway, I highly recommend it, and you can look that one up. It's not crap. Well, believe me, sometimes they can. And I have gone deep, and in my first 7 or 8 years in Japan, even now I go in and out, but basically I'm sort of gone down the international company path now. I've cashed in my experience, you could say. Although honestly, every day I speak mostly in Japanese, and I work mostly with Japanese people. So yeah, it's I'm still pretty much there, but I control my depth now. I'm not like completely in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean like I was in the beginning, and like this guy definitely was for the time that he was describing in this book. So again, it's recommended, and go check that out. Yeah, interesting as well. So I talked last week about how people were complaining about NHK putting hiragana like messages with disaster warning information, and I was kind of like, I understood why NHK did it, and frankly, I thought people were just being dicks, criticizing it. But NHK itself acknowledged that there is this problem, that there are people who don't understand English, for example. Most of the foreigners in Japan are not English speaking. So there's this problem. How do you get information to, and as usual, Japan focuses on Dutch, focuses on Europeans first. But there's a bigger problem that, and he couldn't find the information in English, the only language which it was actually in. Oh, God. Okay, so they're focusing on white people, which is disappointing. But the fact is, there are Vietnamese, there are Brazilians, there are Iranians, there are Chinese, there are North Koreans, and they all need that information as well. Government services like NHK have been struggling with this, and I thought it was legitimate putting hiragana tweets, and it's a reflection. This is kind of the way that Japan works as well. When they screw something up, like getting information out to foreigners in a disaster or something that gets recognized as a problem, rather than everyone has this idea that Japan just like deeply apologizes for it and takes no action for it, and there's no accountability for it. And that's not exactly what happens. The apology is part of it, but it's usually accompanied by a message that we will look into why this happened and take steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. And all of the customs and rules and so on that Japanese society has are basically the aggregation of all of these kind of investigations on like how can we make sure that we improve this next time. And that's what this is probably a bit of a focus on. It's a bit of how could we have done this better for the people who didn't get the information that they needed. And it's kind of tough. I mean, it's certainly. I mean, during the 3/11 earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accident, at that time, most of the information coming into Japan in English was from overseas, and it was hysterical and wrong. And it was not helpful to residents here. It was sensationalist. It was trying to sell news stories there. And the news in Japan, it took days to get translated, if at all. So it's complicated. Naruto says that their emergency warnings were very useful, but they did lack evacuation places. Which facilities are open for the typhoon? The ones nearby my place are open for earthquakes only. Yeah, good point there. And then, it's hard for TV to do that, obviously, because they're broadcasting to 120 million people. But there are, again, different city councils that do have the local information. How they make it available and what languages they make it available in, and their budgets for translation and making it available vary. So, you're right. There probably should be a central government sort of portal for, dedicated to making all this information available. But there you go. So that was something that came up, and it's kind of maybe a positive that we're thinking about it. Bad behavior from the World Cup. It turned out that the Uruguayan players, after losing and just before flying out of the country, in Oita, went into a bar, and apparently in their sadness from having... Let me say first, this is Uruguay's first World Cup, I believe, and they played some great rugby. They were dynamic, they were fast, they looked entertaining. I'd never seen Uruguay play rugby before, and they played good rugby, and I was actually like, wow, they're actually doing really good. And so the fact that they went into a nightclub, they got drunk, they caused something like $40,000 damage, and they were caught on a security system when staff confronted them about the damage to the bar and asking them to pay for the extra damage that they caused. One of the players from this rugby team tackled and assaulted tackled the staff member, causing him to hurt his back, an injury which will take a few weeks to recover. Now, I know a situation like this. There was a situation like this 10 years ago in Tokyo involving one of the local foreign rugby clubs, not my rugby club, but one of them, where basically a rowdy group of rugby players after rugby went to a karaoke box, and they a bunch of guys snuck out without paying, leaving one person drunk asleep in the karaoke box to foot the bill. When he was woken up by the staff, who realized that people had run out without paying and they wanted him to pay the full amount, he was drunk, he was large, he was agitated, and he started assaulting the staff. And somebody who ran back who sort of realized that what they'd done was a bit shitty and went back to go sort of check that he was okay and help sort out the situation, who didn't assault the staff but was involved in trying to settle the situation. He and the other person were arrested. They were in jail for more than 12 months before it even came to trial. The guy who ran back into the karaoke place became one of the 0.1% of people who actually was not convicted. But the drunk guy who started beating up on the staff, I assume he's out of jail by now, but he got a long prison sentence after being in jail for 1 year while waiting for trial. So these rugby players who had a rowdy night, smashing up a bar and assaulting a player and then getting on an airplane and skipping the country, those players could have ended up in jail for and if you ask me, they should have ended up in jail for a long time. That's pretty shitty behavior actually on tour, and I hope that the Uruguayan Rugby Union sanctions the players who were involved. Like, they should be banned from playing, if you ask me, and the rugby union should pay the bar, frankly. I mean, like I say, you talk about the Canadians showing the best way to behave in the World Cup. The Uruguayans definitely showed the worst, and it's really disappointing again, because I thought that they played were they in previous World Cups? Thank you, Mr. Kordychev, for the fact check, and I apologize, Uruguay, on that. But look, they played good rugby. They had a good showing in the tournament. They went home in the worst way, and it's really, really, frankly, it's disgraceful, right? I mean, it's and I think that Uruguayan public should be embarrassed by the team and pressure them to, try to make it right. So anyway, that was extremely disappointing. You saw the floods right now. The death toll from Hagibis is up to like 80 people, and they're still missing people. So and these were mostly from floods and from water damage. So pretty awful stuff actually. But around Tokyo is crisscrossed with rivers, and traditionally, Tokyo was one of the most easily flooding cities in Japan. In fact, when I first got to Japan in the 90s, it was still regular to have floods in neighborhoods like Nakano, near where I lived, where even with all the canals and everything, they would overflow. And this has always been a big problem for Tokyo, and the way that Tokyo sought to resolve it was by building the temple, this massive underground structure. I forget the height of this, is like 75 meters or something, which, I mean, it's an insane. This is basically, those pillars are like high-rise buildings underground, and this area is basically able to take all the flood water from Tokyo, and it does. And so when Hagibis goes over, apart from the fact that there were isolated incidents of wind damage and rain damage and so on around Tokyo, but all of the flooding and so on got sucked up because it all got drained into Saitama, into this place, which you can see in this photo here. I've never been to it before, but I've heard it's incredible, and it's what keeps Tokyo flood free, even through what I understand could have been categorized a Category 6 hurricane if they had one, in terms of this last typhoon. So yeah, it was pretty interesting, and thank you for that. So yes, Japanese internet thanks the underground temple that siphoned off Typhoon Hagibis' torrent. Question from Sergeant Buko: in general, why do foreigners assume they can behave as idiots while they are abroad? Well, good question. And this is something which I've thought of many times, and I think I've shared here, but I'll share my opinion on this because I think that's a good question. I think generally speaking, particularly when you're young and stupid, there is an idea that especially when you're young, basically if you ever get in trouble when you are if I was in New Zealand or Australia or whatever, if you were to get in trouble with the police or do something really stupid, you do have huge social accountability, to all the people that know you finding out, to your friends, to the people from your school, to your family, to all the people that you respect, finding out. Oh, 1 minute, I've got to close the door here. When you are traveling, I think it's the first time, particularly for young people, for the first time that they feel free from that social accountability, which stops us doing dumb shit. And I suppose I always like to joke that the thing about Americans and Australians when they travel is that when you consider that the worst punishment for doing anything wrong is getting sent back to countries that both Americans and Australians consider their home countries to be, and openly say that their countries are the best countries in the world quite often, it's not very scary to be sent. I mean, it used to be scary to be sent to Australia, of course, but now it's actually a good thing. In fact, English people are lining up and getting turned away trying to go to England, trying to go to Australia. Whereas New Zealanders and Canadians, I don't know, maybe it says something about New Zealand and Canada that we behave relatively well, because I believe we're afraid of being sent back, because there's nothing to do there, so it's kind of like there's that kind of freedom from accountability. And it's not just Westerners in Japan. Japanese traveling abroad are very much the same. Japan's a country of immense social control, and Japanese do all sorts of dumb shit overseas. It's kind of funny. I mean, again, I know lots of Japanese who are actually extremely naive, and I worry about them when they travel. But there's also occasional news stories all the time about people from Japan doing dumb shit, which just comes from being, I think as you mature, you realize that just because your parents aren't necessarily going to find out doesn't mean that you should do every dumb thing. But when you're young, we're programmed to do dumb shit. Our maturity is measured, I think, by our ability to resist that while we're young. In some ways, it's how we grow as well, by doing lots of dumb shit. But certainly when you're taken out of the area, the physical framework where you feel accountable, and you're put into a new, exciting, interesting place where nobody knows you, you kind of feel like you're invisible, like you can get away with anything, which of course you're not. But then you don't care what people think if you're never going to see them again. And I think this is why people are idiots. What sort of dumb shit has Hiko done? Good question, Mr. Kordichev. I have done embarrassing stuff. My stuff is pretty low level. Nothing arrestable. I'm not one of these people, I think, that you come to Japan that, for example, toss garbage off the balcony, or throw cans at people and drink too much in public, and get into fights and so on. I've never done anything like that. I can remember that I think the first big trip I did overseas was I went to Spain, and I can remember when I was in Spain and I was meeting other foreigners in Spain. Sometimes I remember going out drinking as a 19-year-old New Zealander, and I just decided, for whatever stupid reason, it would be fun to pretend I was American. I grew up, I had to change my accent. My accent changed a lot growing up from moving around, and here I don't really have a Kiwi accent now. I have some sort of an accent, but I go back to New Zealand, no one thinks I'm a New Zealander, and I always had this thing growing up. I was first Australian, then it was a really Kiwi accent, and now it's sort of neither, and I developed a good ear for that I was a TV addict kid. So I remember when I was in Spain, when I got a little bit drunk and I was going out, I thought, go all night pretending I'm American, and that actually kind of worked. But when I was with some Americans in the hotel and they found out like a few nights later that I was totally not American, they were kind of upset with me. That made me feel a little bit bad. I think I stopped doing it when I went out another night pretending to be Irish all night, thinking I could do an Irish accent. The first problem being apparently I couldn't, and when I met Irish people and I pretended to be Irish to Irish people, and it was not going well, and I decided to double down. It just became such an embarrassing experience in the end. I got it out of my system. I was drunk. I was 19 years old. The other great thing about accountability and developing maturity quickly is not being able to retain your memory when you're drunk. I can tell you. Of all the dumb things I've done when I was young and drunk, I can remember every single one, and that helps you feel that sense of, if not social accountability, just pure embarrassment and shame. Fortunately, I only met one person who apparently found me hilarious trying to be Irish all night and insisting that I was. So yeah, I've Bald Billets boy, pretend you're American. Good Lord, man, what are you smoking? Well, like I say, young and stupid. So the question was, what dumb shit have I done? And it's pretty low key, I think, by all the standards of dumb stuff that you can do. But I did it, and I'm not doing it again. So there you go. Moving right along. This is a typo here. I wrote decision. I was meant to say discussion. I don't know. Probably autocorrect there. But I developed a theory this week. I was talking with somebody about actually a Mr. Corny Chip. Not true at all. Look at Mel Gibson. Yeah, I was giving a coaching talk to a person who was visiting Japan to coach someone who was on my team at work. So it was a work context. And they themselves were mentoring and coaching for the first time, and I was giving them my own tips and advice on mentoring people. And it's kind of funny, that person was kind of saying how coaching was making them self-aware of their own sort of issues. Like when they were suddenly criticizing things, that they realized, wait a minute, that's me, I do that. And I kind of joked with him how, yeah, it's one of those things, is when you gain responsibility, so you could say maturity, but certainly as you gain responsibility in work contexts, it's a bit like becoming middle-aged and becoming a dad, and realizing that you're becoming like your parents, and all the things that you disliked about your parents you're becoming closer to, or you're starting to understand them. And it's a bit like that. But I said specifically, he's kind of like, I don't want to be a dick, but I need to tell them this, and what do I do? And I was kind of like, I was talking about how this reminded me when I first got to Japan, about cool senpai, about senpai. So remembering that when I came to Japan, I joined a Japanese company, and most of the people, I was a university grad like my co-hire, so we were coming straight out of the old-fashioned Japanese school type bukatsu, the club activities. And these people basically were all trying to understand the situation, how there was going to be a people were starting to deal with managers for the first time. They were getting criticized for the first time, and they were having trouble dealing with that. And we were also talking about how when we get to be cool senpais to people, we're going to be cool senpais. And what a cool senpai is hey Tomei Samurai, good to see you. Also, hello Food Bottom Mom, good to see you. And Desmondos, also good to see you. How dumb by Victor standards? Not dumb at all. Well, thank you, but yes. I've done some dumb shit, and there's some stuff I'm probably never going to share, but I shared a little bit tonight, so congratulations. Coming back to cool senpais, the idea of what cool senpai is when you're at like a real kohai, when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, and you're dealing with bosses that are like, you feel like are like busting your balls, like they're criticizing you, and they're not being flexible, and they're sort of like making you go and find the answers instead of just telling you the answers. And they're kind of uptight and telling you what to do all the time and not fun. And you always think, man, when I'm going to be a senpai, when I'm going to be that person, I'm going to be the way that person should behave is they should be cool, they should be friendly, they should be hanging out with us and be one of the gang and telling me the answers when I need them and saying, hey, don't worry, you got this, when I don't have confidence, and all the things that I want from a senpai, the cool senpai. And I kind of told the person that, the problem, what you are facing is what everybody who becomes a senpai faces, which is that cool senpai is an impossible dream. It's an oasis in the desert. It's an illusion. It's an oasis in the desert is not an impossible. What do you call it? A mirage in the desert. The closer you get to it, the more it goes away. I say it's kind of depressing life advice, but it's quite true. When you actually start to become a senpai and you become accountable for other people and you see them screwing stuff up, if you try to be a cool senpai too hard, what's going to happen is they're going to screw up and you're going to get blamed for it, and they're not going to learn. And you're going to have to give feedback. You're going to have to become self-aware enough to point out the things that which are to save people pain down the road, but you got to tell them. And I was kind of giving this advice, kind of realizing that, the whole cool senpai thing, which I used to aspire to be, and then as I became, more of a senpai through the years, I realized, holy crap, this is impossible. It's not attainable. But then again, later on the day, the person actually gave an example of someone who I do consider a cool senpai, but he's kind of new, coming into my team. So I guess it's possible to kind of be a panda senpai, like a cool sort of temporary, everybody thinks is cool, but eventually will, become normal to everybody. But what can you see? Are they really old senpais? Of course they're really old senpais. I don't know if they're really old cool senpais, but I guess there could be. But inherently, senpai just means someone more senior to you, or more specifically in Japan, someone with more experience than you. But yes, nothing like a little honest terror to set a youngling straight. Indeed. I know it sucks, but I'm telling you, so you don't have to go through what I went through. It's kind of, yes, it's inherently, it doesn't work. I mentioned the other week how New Zealand-born, half Fijian, half Kiwi, New Zealand-born Japanese citizen, Japan rugby captain who came to Japan while 16 years old, Michael Leach. In fact, actually, correctly now, Leach Michael. He's actually changed his name legally to Japanese name, Leach Michael. And he talks to people. He's actually apparently did an interview where they asked him, well, how do you feel? What motivates you playing for Japan? And he explained a story, and it's a cool story. That I learned about through Sora News, so there you go, they have good content sometimes. He mentions how when he was on exchange in Japan, apparently his home in New Zealand, his family home, there was a fire. And apparently home burned down. It was a bit of a family disaster. And apparently his teachers at his boarding school in Japan, without telling him, took around a collection and sent the money back over to New Zealand to help the parents. And when he found out about it, he was so sort of moved by that gesture by the teachers. He decided actually back when he was 16 that he was there to sort of play rugby, and it was one of his goals, and he decided apparently that he was never going to play sport for any country other than Japan. These people look after me like this much. That's how I'm going to repay it. And hell, he's gone on to actually be the second most recognized Japanese person in Japan after Shinzo Abe. He's doing good, and he's actually got a bit of a moving story about how he got that connection, which is pretty cool. Mr. Korichev, you saw an interview with Michael Leach in Japanese. You shook, but that's right, he's a Japanese rugby captain, so that's how it should be. Food Bottomum, I suspect I might know who Food Bottomum is now, the more that I see what you're writing. But yes, and oh man, every time that Leach got the ball, the whole stadium, Leach, 50,000 people. It's crazy, actually. It's kind of cool, right, that there's a Kiwi Japanese person who's more Kiwi and more Japanese than me, I would say, who's actually just risen to such heights in Japan. It's amazing. He goes part of the 1% of white people in Japan who does not work as a loser English teacher. I used to work as a loser. English teachers are not losers. 2, I used to be an English teacher. I've done English teaching. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, So, I can tell you're trolling, and that is what that is. The marathon is moving from Tokyo. The marathon, they looked at probably the Dubai marathon or whatever it was, the Doha marathon in Qatar, and they saw people passing out and dying, and realizing that the statistics for weather in Doha are very similar to Japan at the time of the Olympics, which reflects that the Olympics are being held at the wrong time of year, full stop. And apparently it's not really clear what's happened around this, but where the Tokyo Olympic Committee has been for a year preparing the logistics for hosting all of the events, including the marathon, including preparing the marathon route, preparing the volunteers and everyone who's going to look after it, preparing all of the investing and actually a fair amount of cost and preparation for it, and including trying to figure out ways to keep the athletes safe and cool, even though that might be very difficult. And this was the challenge that was being looked at, and why it was looking at. They're looking at running the marathon at like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. The IOC apparently without consultation with the Tokyo Olympic Committee, announced that the Tokyo Marathon, or that the Olympic Marathon for the 2020 Olympics would be run in Sapporo, in the far north of Japan, on the basis that it has lower average temperatures this time of year. A couple of issues with that. One, that's true, but that's on average. Sapporo can get hotter than Tokyo. I mean, it just depends on the day. Not necessarily cooler. I mean, you've got a statistically better chance that it's going to be cooler in Sapporo, sure. It's not a sure thing. That's the first problem. Second problem is apparently the International Olympic Committee did not consult with the Tokyo Olympic Committee, and the Tokyo Olympic Committee had no idea about this, and apparently it's caught everyone off guard. And they're like, well, how are you planning this? Because we've already planned a marathon in Tokyo. Have you talked to say? It doesn't appear that Sapporo has worked with the Olympic Committee separately or anything like that. And in fact, the Tokyo governor, who felt blindsided by this, one made a sarcastic comment: if you want to do it somewhere cool, the coolest place in Japan is the occupied northeast territories that are held by Russia. You could do the marathon there as a goodwill gesture between Russia and Japan, which upset the Russians a lot. But she was saying, if you want to make it somewhere cold, why stop at Sapporo? Why not just go as far north as possible into the islands occupied by Russia? Which is it was a bit trolly and inappropriate, but it was just her mood at the time. And then she said that Tokyo's not going to pay for a marathon outside of Tokyo. Screw you guys, national government. If you're going to support it, national government will pay it. And there was a press conference after where they asked the cabinet secretary, so the national government's going to pay for a marathon outside of Tokyo in Sapporo? And he said, yeah, I haven't heard anything about that. I.e., it doesn't look like anyone's actually decided anything about how this is going to happen. And Tokyo's pissed and they're not going to cooperate. So it looks like it's been handled kind of badly. But yeah. So that is a thing that happened. Looks like it hasn't been handled well, but what can you do? I think I talked about this last week, but indeed it was cool today. I mean, there are 2 South African players in the match against South Africa. I think there are more than that actually. Matsushima is one actually, where his mother, I believe, her father is Zimbabwean, but he was born in South Africa. I didn't actually realize. I thought he came to Japan actually really young, but it turns out that he actually played for the Sharks, like in youth development and in kids level, but then came to Japan and has just turned into an incredible Japanese rugby player. But Kotaro Matsushima is, he is an African Japanese, which there are increasing numbers of, and he's kicking ass. Fantastic rugby player, as well as the other players that have come as adults. And of course with rugby, you can play for any country, you can live there for 3 years, and you qualify so long as you're not allowed to play for any other country after you decide the country that you're going to play with. But yes, indeed, Mr. Koricep, the flying winger, and he's world class, speed and skill, so he's been amazing actually. But yes, so yeah. Well, there's Mondos. It just appears. It appears like a shit show actually. And while I'm sympathetic that it does look like a dumb idea doing the Olympics as a whole at this time of year, and the marathon does look like it's going to be a problem, I still didn't doubt that Tokyo was going to figure out something. And yeah, it sounds like it's been done the worst way possible without consultation. So there you go. Lodge 49. So this is what I was watching, and it was. I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked it up, but I'm pretty sure that's Kurt Russell's son. I think I saw the credits, his name was Russell, and he just looks like him. Really, really, really good, apart from the fact it's got David Urey in it, and it's always fun to see David Urey in one of the supporting parts. But the whole thing, it's actually, when I say really, really good, it takes a long time to build up. It's pretty slow-paced and weird, but it builds up nicely. And what I like about it is that part of the reason it takes a while to build is because it focuses deeply on multiple characters, not just on a small number of core characters. And yeah, great series, highly recommended. Looking forward to season 2. That is some of the damage that was done by the Uruguayan rugby players before they skipped the country, and again, extremely disappointing. Contrast that with Canada, that after their game in Kamaishi, which was very badly affected by the typhoon, they got out and they started, apparently they literally were helping sweep up. They literally got brooms, and maybe that's what they're going to do next, who knows. But there you go, they were actually removing mud from flooded houses and so on, and helping clean up. They participated in school activities, and they stayed in Komaishi and helped out the town. What an awesome team. I mean, and this is actually, again, why I said this last week, while the World Cup is, I think, in many ways a superior event to the Olympics, just the fact that because it's spread through the whole country, it's great for participation of the entire nation. It's great for the people coming to Japan, that they get to see more of the country and not just the one city. And stuff like this can happen, and credit to the Canadians. Just like, I maybe was harsh on the Scottish, but at the same time, as a lawyer myself, who loves rugby, when you have a rugby team calling out lawyers, the first rule of being a lawyer, and I know that people won't believe this, but it's my job, so listen, I'll say it again, you can all laugh at it. The first job is to have common sense. You figure out if it doesn't, the test for any advice that you give is that if it doesn't make common sense, it's probably not good advice, and that's fundamentally what it's about. Mr. Koricep, I know that you're laughing at this, But the thing is that, you know, so the Scots, thinking that they were going to get lawyers to sue the World Cup for cancelling a game due to a typhoon where 80 people died, you know, that defies common sense and good sportsmanship. And it was, you know, and I was joking that, you know, given how their players turned out in the game against Japan, maybe they should have put their lawyers on the field. I mean, that would have been a bit better use of them. But you talk about a team that, you know, and after they lost, you know, pretty much in the worst way possible, just given the way that their union behaved, they left. Now, Canada had the same situation. They had a game cancelled, and they didn't, again, not quite the same stakes for them, so not exactly the same situation. But they didn't call their lawyers and sue the World Cup and then, you know, screw off on an airplane back. They bloody took brooms and they started helping to clean up the towns. I mean, like I say, just good people doing very, very good things, and credit to me, team of the World Cup, actually. Credit to Canada, and hell, geez, give these guys some help. I mean, wouldn't it be great to have them host a World Cup sometime, and, you know, have them become competitive in the way that Japan is? But yeah, it was disappointing. So that was Canada. They were just awesome anyway, doing that the best way possible. That's all my topics. I've got a few minutes left. Why don't I do some tunes? I haven't done some tunes for a while. Let me go plug in. Sue everybody. Well, it's happened, and eat lots of deep fried things. And they're suing literally over a typhoon called Hagibis. I mean, could you think of it? Anyway, let me just get the iPad. I'll be right back. Oh, shit. And let's see, I haven't done this for ages, actually. Oh, jeez. Whoops, I lost the sound source. Let's see if this still works. In fact, let's see. Alrighty. See if I can get this hooked up right. Give me a genre to play. Give me a BPM and a genre, and let's see if I can get this going. Let's see if I can get the party started. Boom. Oh, well, that's a good start. Been ages since I've done one of these, actually. Let's do this. Boom. Okay, only thing is the sound I'm not getting. Let me see if it's a volume issue. Oh, there we go. It's working. Let me check the sound on here. Nice. Okay, come on, give me a genre. Check new age jazz, space dance, uplifting trance. Uplifting trance is easier. Space dance sounds challenging. Space dance sounds kind of ambient. I could go for that. Let's do some minimal sort of stuff. Okay, what would a BPM for space trance be? It'd be kind of slow, wouldn't it? Let's do, probably be slower than this, but let's do this. Okay. Let's add some hi-hats. That's nice. Not bad. Hey Mo Beer Fire. Congrats on the rugby. It's pretty cool. That's the show. Thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like if you liked. Hope you enjoyed the tune as well. I thought that was quite good. That was the first go in a while, just when the battery's running out too. Yeah, that was some fun. Good to see you, White to Sun. Good to see you, Mogberry Pike. Congratulations again. That was a great game by South Africa. Hoping to see you in the finals in a couple of weeks from now. Hope you guys beat Wales because they didn't play very good. Yeah, it was kind of nice music, wasn't it? It was good. Good topics, good comments, good music. What can I say? Tokyo Tonight every week. I'll be back here next week. I'll be in Singapore during the week. Remember to DM me or hit me up if you'd like to hang out. There might be a chance. I'm not sure if there is. I'll be there for work, but there might be some time. Anyway, I'm coming back on the Saturday. And I will see you all same time next week. Ka kite ano. Keep cool till after school. See you later. Peace. End stream. Boom.